All right, so last thing we talked about, we were kind of finishing up on the 3/5 compromise. Yes? Is that what you have in your notes?
Last thing, we were talking about slavery.
Yeah, and the 3/5 compromise, right?
Yeah, the last thing I have Southern states wanted slavery.
Hey. This is,
So do you think we're going to get like a lot of homework on it from everyone else? Did you get that?
I don't know. What's the last thing you had?
No, it's like maybe 1, 2, 3.
Was I just ignored?
Here, this is the summary. Those are the last 3 points you showed.
Trying to find that.
Number 3. Northern state had to compromise. Oh, yeah. I just had to show the page.
Turn the page. Yeah, I was kind of doing this with you right here. Okay. So you guys have seen this. Am I correct?
We saw A. We didn't see B and C.
All right. Well, guys, basically, I think based on your earlier learning in 8th grade and 11th grade, you have some knowledge of this, okay? And actually, we're going to touch on this subject again in a couple of days when we read one of the Federalist Papers by James Madison about this subject matter of the 3/5 compromise. So understand, this Constitution does not happen. This new government is not formed if there's not a compromise. The southern states are not going to join on board unless there's a compromise. You understand that, right? Okay, so, and I think I was kind of getting into this discussion about, well, you know, can we be critical of the founders here? The men at the Constitutional Convention, that they did not tackle the issue of slavery in 1787. Sure. Okay, but understand the time period that we were living and the reliance on slavery for their economy. And that goes for the North and the South. Okay, because the North was really big into shipping. Okay, so they would ship the slaves for the Southerners. And the Southerners would purchase the slaves and work the slaves and own the slaves. Okay, and as I was saying the other day, guys, this is a nasty business. Some people refer to it as a peculiar institution. Okay, it is indeed. And we're going to push this issue back so that it's going to have to be dealt with later on. Just like in 1776 with the Declaration, Jefferson and others wanted to tackle this issue, but the issue was independence. It wasn't slavery. And here the issue is a new constitution, not slavery. Although it is the supreme law of the land, and they could have dealt with this, but it wouldn't have happened. You wouldn't have gotten the countries or the different states on board. Okay? Now they did, in a way, start to tackle this issue when it comes not to import any new slaves after 1808. Okay, which makes the slaves that are already here kind of a more valuable commodity. If you stop the importation of new slaves, the ones that are already here are more valuable. Okay. And Congress cannot place tariffs on exported goods. And that's good that's in there. You might say, well, what's the big deal? Well, guys, if it exists, Congress wants to tax it. So the fact that it's in the Constitution that you can't tax exports means you can't tax exports. Okay. Yes? Okay, so we've got some other compromises to deal with here now. Okay? This one is going to make the southern states pay more in taxes because they're going to have more population counted, right? But it's also going to give the southern states more seats in the House of Representatives. Okay? That first House of Representatives, how many members of the United States House of Representatives are there today?
435.
435. That was pathetic. Okay?
Again, we're ready now.
You're ready now. Okay. That first Congress, guys, is going to have 65 members of the House. How many members of the Senate is that first Congress going to have? Come on. 26. Who said that? That was Tanner. That a boy. All right. Yeah, 13 states, 2. Yeah. Very good, people. I'm turning the page. All right, how are we going to elect the president? Okay? Well, some people wanted the people to elect the president. Some people wanted Congress to elect the president, which would be more of a parliamentary system, yes?
Yes.
Well, let's compromise. And this is what we get. Okay? The compromise is the Electoral College that you are somewhat familiar with. Okay? If you were paying attention in the last election at all, you know that the winner of the Electoral College was not the winner of the popular vote. Okay? The popular vote does not matter. It doesn't count, doesn't mean anything. The popular vote in the states is what matters, not nationwide. Okay? So this can be very confusing to people, this Electoral College. And so I'm going to clear it up for you once and for all. How does that sound? Okay. So I'm gonna journey over here to this map on the wall here. Okay. Is it over here?
Yeah, I can see you.
Does it look good? Okay. Grace, am I in there?
Yeah, you're in there.
Yeah, it's kind of tilted though.
Okay, that's all right. So this map is great. Okay. C-SPAN sent this to me for free. Now, how many guys have ever heard of C-SPAN?
I don't know who that is.
Okay, I failed.
I know.
Okay, yeah, okay. You know, channel surfing. There's so many channels now. It's hard, but occasionally you will go by C-SPAN, and basically it's a channel there's C-SPAN and C-SPAN 2 that is run by the government and funded by the government, and basically it keeps you updated on what's going on in the government. So you go to C-SPAN today, and if they're on the House and they're debating the bill, legislation, they'll be showing that. Okay? So it's kind of a public service channel. So anyhow, Kansas, this is the electoral map. So Kansas has 6 electors. Okay? What this means is we have 4 members of the House, based on our population, plus 2 senators. That's how many electoral votes we get. Total number members of Congress is how you determine electoral college. Not population, because if you just said population, then we would have 4. You got to add the Senate in there to get 6. California has 53 members of the House, plus 2 senators, 55 electoral college votes. Every 10 years, in this country, we do a census to do a population count. Yes? That's in the Constitution. I showed you the first one the other day. 1790 was the first census. Okay? So in 2020, we'll do a head count. All right? And some states are going to lose population. Some states are going to gain population. Who's losing? Illinois, New York. These states up here in the Rust Belt. Used to be lots of jobs and industry up here. Okay? And that all rusted away, and that's why they call this the Rust Belt. Okay? So between 2000 and 2010, okay, New York lost 2 electoral college votes. They lost 2 House seats. Okay? Pennsylvania won, New Jersey won, Massachusetts won, Ohio lost 2, Michigan lost 1. Okay? Iowa lost 1, Illinois lost 1, Missouri lost 1. Okay? Florida gained 2. Texas gained 4. Now, Louisiana is the only southern state that lost Hurricane Katrina. So a lot of the people that left Nolens went to Houston and Hotlanta. Okay? Arizona gained. Now out here you got some western states gaining population. Washington State, Nevada, and Utah. Okay, Las Vegas was the fastest growing city in America during the early 2000s. Okay, so.
What's the deal with Nebraska?
Okay, I'll get to that. Okay, so after the census in 2020, Illinois is probably going to lose a seat. Okay, California may, for the first time in a long time, lose a seat. Why are people leaving New York and Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Illinois? Why are they leaving those states? It's expensive. High taxes. Guys, the state taxes in New York and California are ridiculous. I mean, Kansas has pretty high state income taxes. Okay? Texas and Florida, no state income tax. They fund their state government through different means than taxing the people, which is pretty interesting. Okay?
How do they do that?
We just raised taxes in the state. Huh? Oh, yeah, I mean, these states are doing really well. Texas job growth is the fastest in the nation over the last 15 years.
So are the property taxes higher like in Oregon?
I'm sorry?
Are the property taxes higher like in Oregon?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Especially, yeah, it's expensive to live out west. And yeah, it's expensive to live here. Now, the Redneck Riviera is not too expensive yet. Still pretty moderate there. Yeah. I mean, seriously, to live in this part of Florida, unless you're on the beach, it's kind of like living in Wichita, the cost of living. Okay, but you go to Kansas City, guys, it's more expensive to live there. Quite a bit.
So why Texas so good?
Yeah. Okay. So, all right.
I don't understand this joke.
Okay. So Nebraska. So all these states, except listen, besides Nebraska and Maine, those two states do it differently. In Kansas, if you win, if Trump beat Hillary by one vote in the state of Kansas, you get all 6. In California, if Hillary beat Trump by one vote, you get all 55. It's winner take all. In Nebraska, they split theirs up into 5 districts. And whichever district you win, you get that elector. Okay? And the one around where the university is there in Nebraska, that's the one that went for Obama. Okay? This is Romney, Obama, right? Romney, Obama? Yeah. Yeah. So Romney won 4 of the districts in Nebraska. Obama won 1. Okay?
So
In Maine,
why is Nebraska like that?
because they chose to. Other states can choose to as well. Okay? This would help the Republican Party if every state went to a district map. You ever seen one of those maps by counties that went red or blue?
So is blue in the city?
The cities are blue, but everything else is red. Okay? So that would, if you draw up congressional districts or you draw these districts, well, most of them Republicans are dominating the House of Representatives right now. So if you did it by district, Republicans are going to win more presidential elections, you might say. Okay. If you go with the popular vote, Democrats are going to win more elections for president. Okay. So we'll look at that more in depth, I promise. Okay. Maine, all 4 went for Obama. Okay. In this last election, Trump actually won 1 of the 4 in Maine, and I think he might have won all 5 in Nebraska, but I'm not sure. So there's okay. So let's look at this. All right. So how many members are there in the United States House of Representatives? 435. Okay. So you've got the House, 435. You've got the Senate, 100. Okay. That's 535 electoral votes. Now there is one place in the continental United States where people live that is not a state. The District of Columbia. Okay? Now, for many, many years, the people that lived in Washington, D.C. did not have the power to vote for president and vice president. They had no electors. Until the 23rd Amendment, which we're going to be discussing, okay? 23rd Amendment gives D.C. the same number of electoral college votes it would have if it were a state. So based on their population, they would get one member of the House and 2 senators. So 23 gives D.C. 3. D.C. 23, 3. It all kind of flows and rhymes together. 23rd Amendment, 22nd Amendment was passed in 1940. It was right after Roosevelt, 1949. So this was done about 1950. Yeah.
Why isn't DC 6?
It's a district set up basically as our government, our seat of government, and people live there. It's not a state. So if I add this together, right, I get 538. I'm going to divide that by 2, and that equals 269. That's half. In order to win the presidency of the United States of America, 270 is the magic number. 270 is the magic number, okay? So, does it matter? The census is going to play a role in this, okay? So when those northeastern states lose, and guys, they're heavily Democratic, when they lose population and some of those people move to red states, then those red states have more electors. Now this is what confuses people. What in the heck is an elector? Okay, so when you go to vote, okay, they're going to have president and vice president. That's who you get to vote for. It's going to have their names up there. Clinton, Kane, and Trump, Pence. That's what you get to vote for. There were some other candidates that were running. Okay, you're not actually voting for them. You were voting in Kansas for 6 Democrat electors, or 6 Republican electors, or 6 Libertarian electors, or 6 Reform Party electors. Each party picks 6 people in the state of Kansas that will be the electors. I could be an elector. You could be an elector. Anybody that is like, you know, somebody that's been a lifelong Democrat or Republican, has served in the state legislature, had been a mayor, a governor, a former governor, that the party says, hey, you want the honor of being an elector. And so you're actually voting for those 6 people, not the president and vice president. Let me give you another example how this works. How many of you guys have ever watched that TV show, The Antiques Roadshow, on PBS? Fabulous stuff, okay? I saw a guy come in a few years ago with an election poster from 1860. Who ran for president in 1860? Abe Lincoln did, right? So it was a Republican Party poster. It didn't even have Lincoln's name on it. It just had the electors from that state's, their name on it. Okay? Now, we don't do that today. Because it's just changed. But you're actually voting for these 6 people. Now, when you vote for these 6, say, okay, you got Kansas, right? Say they win. These 6 people will actually go to Washington, D.C. in December and cast the actual vote for president and vice president. Now, it's just assumed they're going to vote the way Kansas told them to vote. But here's the thing. There's no law that says one of these 6 electors could change and vote. This one could vote for the Dem when they get to Washington. This is why you choose loyal Republicans, loyal Democrats, loyal Libertarians, and so forth. There's been about a dozen times in American history where these electors have changed their vote from what the people told them to do. Okay, it's never impacted the outcome of an election. If you're paying pretty close attention after the 2016 election, after Trump was elected, you know, you have that lame duck period between when the president is elected and takes office, right? there were Hollywood actors, you can go back and look at this on YouTube, and they were trying to convince these electors from the different states not to vote for Trump when they got to Washington. There was this whole movement trying to get these, and the funny, the ironic thing, I guess you could say, is that actually one of them did change their vote. It was a Democrat elector that voted for Trump, or somebody else. But one of the Democrat electors changed their votes. Didn't impact the election. Okay, it never has, but it could. And it's kind of an interesting thing, because let's say that campaign by Hollywood to convince the electors that Trump's this crazy loony man that was colluding with the Russians and so forth, you could change your vote and put in somebody else before before December. There's a few weeks in there. Let's say Hillary won, and all of a sudden this bombshell comes out that says, she did break all these laws. She did all this stuff, right? They could change their vote. So it could alter an election. So does this make sense to you guys? That's how the Electoral College works. Now, we're going to hit that again in the next section, but you'll have a good good background for it. All right. So this is the compromise, and we will talk about the debate over the popular vote versus this. Okay, because a lot of people think this is arcane, it's old, it needs to change. We're a democratic country. We need to go with the popular vote. So we'll talk about all that.
I remember seeing online petitions to that you could sign that would be we need to change this because Hillary won the popular vote.
Right. Yeah. There's a movement and then it dies off. I mean, now that's happened several times. Al Gore lost the Electoral College, won the popular vote. It's happened 4 or 5 times now in history. Okay, so twice in the 2000s already. But the founders did it this way. Why? Right. Yeah, I mean, it's that whole fear of true democracy, I think, that the founders had. That the population would not be educated enough to make these decisions. That you need representatives of the people, and that would be the electors. But like I said, the electors have stayed with what the people have said almost all the time. Okay. Now I have a quote in here. September 17th, guys, is when most of these people will sign this becomes known as Constitution Day, September 17th. Yeah. 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 Okay. So here's one of the biggest problems with the census, Kaylee, is that do you count people that are here that are not citizens? Do you count permanent residents? If you are here illegally, do you want the census to find you? No. Okay? And then you have some people in this country that are just weary of Big Brother. On the other side, really conservative mountain, freeman, militia people that I don't want the government to know I'm off the grid. I don't want them to know where I live. I don't want them to have any information on my family. Big Brother's watching me, and I'm not going to do the census. Okay. What's that?
My grandma's one of those people.
She's one of those
She
people.
got the long form and she literally just refused to send it in. We had government people knocking on our door and I'm like, nope.
Yeah.
Not any part of that.
Yeah. I got the long form back in 2000. And they asked, it's kind of interesting. They ask questions like, how far do you commute to work? How many pets do you have? How many automobiles in your household? And they use the census as really a great tool, actually, for businesses that want to open up in, Northwest Wichita and say, how many pet owners are in Northwest Wichita? They can go to the census. So you want to open a pet store. Okay? For cities, this is important to look at their population changes, to see how many police officers, how many firefighters, how much water they're going to need over the next decade. It's for city planners. So the census can be very helpful in a lot of different ways, especially with that long form.
It's like a huge statistic gather.
Oh yeah, yeah, and guys, it's all public. It's all online. You can go on the Census Bureau and look up all different types of stats. It's pretty cool. So I understand there are people that don't want to get counted. Now, this is one of the things. If you go to the cities, take New York City or LA, and your census work, and you're trying to find people. Now, all these are sent in the mail, and most people just put it back in the mail, fill it out and put it back in the mail. But if you don't, they hire census workers. So in 2020, if you're unemployed, I think the government pays like $12 an hour. You can go be a census worker, okay? And you'll go knock on doors and try and find people. Think about large apartment complexes or big housing developments in the inner city, and you have to go try and find people. So are you going to count everybody? The answer is it's going to be difficult. So the answer is probably no. So the Democrats wanted to do, Kaylee, a statistical sampling as the census. And there's been kind of an argument over this in Congress, thinking a statistical sampling might be more accurate than an actual head count.
What do you mean a statistical sampling?
Well, to count those people that are trying to avoid being counted. You know what I mean? So like more of a statistical analysis to come up with the census, okay, rather than an actual head count. And so there's a debate. Huh? Yeah, exactly. So so you can understand why Democrats would want more of a statistical sampling, because it's hard to find those people, and where are those people living? In the cities. So the more people you can count in your cities means the more members of the House of Representatives your city or your state has. Does that make sense? You can see why Democrats would want to do that, because cities tend to be heavily Democratic. So the more people they can count in the census, the more political power they have. Does that make sense? Okay. So this debate so far, the people that want the actual head count have won that debate. That's a good question. Okay. I wanted to read this to you guys. This is something that I feel like a lot of Americans get totally wrong in understanding the Constitution. I think you get it based on what we've studied to this point, why we have a government, why we have a social contract, and it is to protect your natural rights. Okay? I think you understand that. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Okay, so a lot of people feel like the Constitution is an instrument to restrain the people. No, that's not why we have a Constitution. We have it's an instrument for the people to restrain government, lest it become dominate our lives and interests, lest it become tyrannical. Okay, if you look at Locke, okay, and what he said and the influence he had on our founders, what Locke is doing is saying we need to have a social contract where we trust people. People enter into a contract with the government of the people, okay, to set limits upon ourselves. Okay, not to control us, not to take care of us. Okay, but we need to be able to constrain government, because it will run wild. It has run wild. I mean, our federal government is a massive bureaucracy, a leviathan, if you will. Patrick Henry. What's this all about? All right, let me hang on. Make sure I don't have anything else I need to talk about. The electoral process, the Senate. Okay, don't write that down yet. So, in addition, we're talking about compromises they got to come up at the end. Okay, before they sign this document and send it to the states. So the Senate has what's called an advise and consent on treaties and appointments. This is put in there. The Senate gets to advise and consent. So the president gets to appoint a Supreme Court justice or a federal judge. Who has to approve? The Senate must consent. Okay? The president can make a treaty with other countries, but the Senate must consent. Okay? So this is a check and a balance that they agree upon at the convention, that the president is not going to be a king. The president isn't going to be able to appoint whoever he wants. The president isn't going to be able to make treaties with other countries as many as often as he wants. The Senate is going to check that power. Okay? That's an important part of our Constitution and our checks and balances that is derived here during this meeting, this convention. They're also going to come up with ways to amend the document itself, amend the Constitution, which we will get into. We will talk about how you amend the Constitution. We talked about the 23rd Amendment here. There's 27 of them. We're going to learn them all next week.
What?
Yes.
Yay!
All 27.
I've been waiting for this moment my whole
The
life.
first 10 are easy. The last
Hey.
were
Hey,
rest.
hang on a second.
17.
You're reading a government book, not a history book. So what you talked, this just hit me. So what we talked about this morning, no, you're not reading one of those. We've got to read something different than what we're talking about. Okay. We'll talk after class. Okay, I'm sorry. That just popped in my.
Braille doesn't know how to do.
Scared me.
Hey, it's
What?
It's irrelevant. It's not. Yeah.
What's not relevant?
I think Braille doesn't know how many amendments
Oh, okay. All right. We got to have a capital. Okay. Let's think about this. Let's get this in order. All right. The first capital under the Articles of Confederation was where? Philadelphia. Where's the first capital going to be under the U.S. Constitution? New York. With plans to build out of the swamp of Maryland a district as the seat of government. We're going to call it District of Columbia, named after Columbus, who everybody loves to hate on these days.
Why? For good reason.
Because he
was the worst.
Okay, so
Define America.
again, year 1492 is different than 2018. So if you want to hold everybody throughout history to the same principles that we have in 2018, go ahead. You will hate everybody, Kaylee.
Oh, I do.
Yes, everybody. Okay, throughout history. Okay. So, where's the first capital under the U.S. Constitution? New York. All right. Now, we've got this document. The delegates have agreed on it. Now it's got to go to the states. How many states do you need? 9. You need 9. But really, you don't want to have 4 states saying, no, we don't want to do this. You want them all. Okay? So the argument begins. There are people opposed to this. What is the biggest reason why people are opposed to this? I'll give you 2, and you better tell me on the test. Because you're going to have to write about these arguments between these two. Now, I do have a graphic on page... What?
2 reasons are opposed.
Page 43. Guys, I have my zipper down. And somebody put a note on my thing saying XYZ zipper. And I was like, oh, my zipper's down. Who did that? Thank you, Suzette. You're wonderful. Just say it. Keep it. Hey, your zipper's down. How many guys noticed? Heather, you'll love this. So, hey, I'm flipping through my notes. Like this, going to the page, and I find this sitting here on my foot. XYZ zipper. My zipper was done. Okay. Now, Suzette put this note on here, and I just found it. I've been talking for 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
They couldn't have just told you, Mr. Ebright.
I know, it's funny. We got to have this discussion. If I have a booger, you need to tell me I have a booger. If you have a booger, I'm going to say, hey.
Just say it.
I made another one to put on your desk if we got out of class and we settled down.
The thing that swivels on.
Yeah. This is all on tape.
Sorry, I should have came in here earlier. I would have told you. Ebright, zipper.
All right.
I made coffee. Okay.
To be continued.
What am I making?